Hi, this is your badass bookworm, Cassandra Dallett. We're back on video and audio this time. And this week we have Daphne Gottlieb. I'm a huge fan. And Daphne has a new book coming out next month, October 16th, if all goes right. And nothing has in the past 2 years, but we remain hopeful. The book is called Saint 1001. And I got to tell you, I was up into the wee hours reading it. Like, I could not freaking put it down. Yeah. And my attention span is literally the worst. So that says a lot. It says a lot. But I would like to read for people what your press is. Madhat Press. People can go to madhatpress.com. Product Saint 1001 by Daphne Gottlieb. Are they doing some pre-order there? Yeah.
We are, and it should be up for pre-order on Amazon this week as well, and Powell's and all the other fine retailers, e-tailers.
Yay, excellent. But I'd like to read the little description because I was just trying to explain it to Brian, my audio guy, and I was just all over the place because there's a lot. There's so much that goes into this. But this is what it says on your press sheet here. For decades, S corresponds with her first love, J. One story she does not tell, 3 Men and an Alley. Isolated by trauma and depression, S finds a way back into her skin through the strangers she meets online for sex. Her adventures titillate J, who urges her on to more encounters. As in the 1001 Nights, this is a story made of stories, interrupted and overwritten. S's life becomes scenes from everything from The Graduate and the story of O to the words of Charles Manson and the Bible. What emerges in words, invocations, and collage is a grasping at presence and absence in the age of the internet. To be read in real time is life, and the blank screen is death. Man.
Pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. I also, one of your blurbs is from Charlie J. and Anders, author of All the Birds in the Sky, and I thought this was really good. Daphne Gottlieb is a feral genius who breaks into your lockbox of insecurities and traumas and crafts them into self-portrait of America. Beautiful, deadly, but never less than honest. You're in the best pair of wrong hands. I thought that was pretty great, too. I'm also a fan of Charlie J. and Anders. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I can't imagine anybody listening to this podcast wouldn't know you and be familiar with your work. But if they're not, they should be. And other books, you have 10 books out. One that I own is a short story collection, Pretty Much Dead, which I highly recommend. Other works include Dear Dawn, Letters from Death Row by the First Female Serial Killer, Eileen Wuornos. And Daphne lives in San Francisco, where she tries to help the injured in the city's class war, which is to say she is a hero. Right? You know about that. I have to say my earphones are kind of weird. So I have so many questions about how you did this piece of magic. And I want people listening to understand that there's lines from literally all of these places: The Graduate, The Story of O, Charles Manson, the Bible, The Exorcist, like Scooby-Doo.
Friday, Herbie the Love Bug.
Yes.
Yeah.
How?
Well, what it is. Go ahead, sorry.
No, how... I have no idea of it's like the spinning plates thing or something you have. This is it's told in letters. It has all these millions of sources. How do you keep all this? Did you have crazy pins and strings all over your walls? How do you keep all this going?
Not at all. And I actually started writing it in the middle. Because I didn't know what it was going to be. I started writing it as a short story, and I was really pleased with it. I felt like sometimes the trade-off to getting older is you can do what you mean to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
rather than throwing darts at a wall and once in a while you hit the bullseye, you're like, got it, you know, and that's how I felt writing this story. It's like, that's what I meant, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, it's what I meant. I can control my hand on it. And so I was like, I wonder if I can do this again about something similar but different. And so the way, like when you're writing poetry, one poetry sort of opens a question that the poem you wrote didn't answer. There's
Yes.
a next. So in this case, the story asked another question to me. And so I sort of followed that. And then I ended up going backwards and forwards sort of at the same time as it built this world around it. And because the first story had these sort of excerpts in it, it kept going that way. And the thing is that the reason they're there, to put a really fine point on it, is that we are all overwritten by our culture. We are all overwritten by it. So regardless of what the reference are, whether it's Tupac lyrics or whether it's Jiffy Pop commercial or what it is, we're pack rats. We gather these things around us, and particularly with things that we encounter that we don't know how to contextualize, that becomes our guide. So if we're having sex with a 20-year-old guy, Graduate is going to come to mind because it's an allegory. It's a similar situation, not allegory, but an allele. It's got the same DNA, even though it's completely different. So we start grafting these experiences onto our own lives. And sometimes it makes sense. And sometimes it's grandiose. And sometimes it doesn't really quite fit. And we have to keep searching. But that's where all of that sort of started. And it was really inchoate. I didn't really conceptualize it that way. I just knew that it belonged there. And as I got deeper and deeper into it, it became much more methodical. You know, at first it was an aesthetic choice and sort of a passionate, emotional choice. Like, I know that this is right, but I couldn't have said why it was right until I got another 30 or 40 pages. Like, that's what it is.
So yeah, so people understand. So there's footnotes, billions of them, and I usually find that distracting, and it's not. It's not at all. It's like you just fall into the rhythm of the whole thing, and it's consuming. This is not just like a blurb of nice words. It is so consuming. I think it probably does help if you're obsessed with casual encounters and read those for years, which I certainly did. But I don't think if you're not, you will find out so much about the human condition through that lens, right? Don't you think? Like, it's a,
Conditions and casual encounters.
mhm.
I think so. I think it was just a very, very odd and kind of wonderful moment in America where we didn't have photos in person. For anyone who's listening who doesn't know, and I don't remember exactly the year, there was this hookup strand on Craigslist that you could place that and people would write back to you, but to be really specific, I want you in a French maid outfit to come over and dance to La Bamba, you know, whatever it was. And someone would answer because they were curious or because they had time to kill or they thought that that was what they've been waiting for all their life. And there were catfish, but I don't actually remember there being that many catfish until like later in the thing. And so that was casual encounters. And
Yeah, I think in its last days it was used mostly for professionals, looking for dates. But when I worked in an office, I was one of many people in the office that spent a lot of time there. And I still have friends that I met on casual encounters, to be honest.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, it was a thing. And now there's Tinder and there's all these other things that sort of take the place, but doesn't work the same way.
Oh, you don't get to constitute yourself in language. And that's
Right.
the difference. I mean, I think that you can still say what you want, but people are still going to respond to your face and your body and also your age and all sorts of other things where there was no imperative to disclose any of that off the bat. And if you wrote to someone you had chemistry with and then they turned out to not be attractive to you, you sort of backed out of there slowly, but it was still interesting exchange. You know, it was still excavating the human condition, as you said.
It is. It is. It's
Out there.
always interesting. It's always an adventure. And I think it's really relatable that S isn't leaving the house a lot for a long period of time. And that this is even, you know, before there was all the door dashes and weed was being delivered and everything, you could have sex delivered quite easily with casual encounters, right? And so it's like an introvert can do the most extroverted thing, but it's still introvert. It's right. It's something that you're getting at in here, that really, really rung true about the maybe not going further than the block at all times, but meeting all these people and their whole life story sometimes because they're having these casual encounters.
That's why it reminds me of something like Apology Magazine, or any, like meeting someone in an airport, these sort of chance, random, self-selected encounters, being next to someone at a concert and then meeting them again 6 months later, and sort of odd, but sometimes wonderful, and sometimes you get a great story and that's all you get. But
I feel like when we were younger, I mean, like in the 80s, San Francisco, I felt like you just met people everywhere you went because I was young, maybe, or because I was out all the time, or because it was a different place. And I think all those things are probably true, right? And so the more that I don't want to leave the house, which continues every year to get worse, the more we find these other ways to make connections online. And that was definitely an interesting piece. And it's kind of sad that it's gone. But I think you mentioned in the beginning that there is still like, what's the missed connections? That's still there?
Yeah, that's still there because there's apparently no commercial application for it.
Right.
And I don't think it had the same appeal either. Like, because it was just, hey, I saw you walking your dog, you were wearing a blue shirt and a red tie, and I'd really like to meet up with you, you know, and that's somehow less.
They're often like amazingly written though, if I recall, right? There would be much more, not always. Sometimes it would just be like the description and you were on BART at 7 a.m. or whatever. But sometimes they would be like amazingly written and detailed, and like somebody just putting this whole thought out there. It was kind of cool.
I don't remember anything amazing in Missed Connections.
No?
But I'm sure there was.
Yeah, there was.
I really wanted one.
Maybe
really,
they
really
were
wanted
fake,
one.
but I know. It would be kind of great to get one. I wanted
Got
one
the
too.
back page of the Village Voice, and when they had
You
personal
did?
ads, they had Missed Connections there. Yes.
Oh,
that was a very proud moment for me.
Tell me about it.
Oh, it was just, I was
Where did they see you?
talking to this bartender at a bar called Siberia that hasn't existed for decades. And I left and I was really, really drunk. And I had the spins when I left, I think, but I found, you know, I went back to where I lived at the time. And next week in Village Voice, there was this thing, because it had this can of Alpo behind the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And we were making dog jokes about it, but it was, you said my bark was worse than my bite. Let's get together and discuss it over a bowl of Alpo, dog eat dog. And it was just like, it was definitely for me from him, and it was cute.
That's fantastic. That's pretty great. So back to how you managed to put all these things together. How do you keep track of this vast amount of quotes from all these different places? Are you knowing what you want to say and looking for them, or just these are things that are already swimming around in there and you're able to pluck them out and put it together?
I don't know the exact quotes a lot of the time, but I'm like, oh, I know that Sartre wrote a lot of this thing. I think it was in Nausea, and then I can, you know, go searching for it. But sometimes I don't know, and it's just a sort of free for all, like what works. What am I looking for? I know I want a story about a monster, and the monster is put together in, oh, okay. And sometimes, you know, I wouldn't find exactly what I wanted, but I could usually get close. And when I couldn't find what I wanted, it meant that it was time to back up and find another way through, right? Like,
Uh-huh. I was like boggling my mind, honestly. Um, there was also this thing that you did. There was themes there. I'm trying to think of how to say this. There was ways in which the experience with the casual encounters that S had, and other themes about being femme in this society, whatever. There was, reoccurring themes of women being attacked, assaulted, killed, raped. There's there's this thing, as this says, one story that's not told. There's a story that's not told. I didn't finish yet, but so far is not told. But it comes through in 1,000 different ways. And I just thought that was really masterfully done. I'm trying to find a question in here and not just tell you how great it was, but it really is that great. Um, it's it's like there's some themes that you're trying to get in there, and they just come through in all these different ways. So if it's a guy trying to get a threesome going with his wife, which, as I recall, was the most common thing on Casual Encounters, you get to see his whole like controlling, kind of sexist, stupid thing that people do when they think they're entitled to get what they want. And it relates in all these other ways to these kind of side stories.
I guess what I'll say to your
My
not a
not
question,
question.
is that I think specifically trauma fragments us. And I think that the being able to name something like finding a story that you can graft onto, right, is a mark of healing or a mark of at least coverage, And I
Yeah.
think putting the bones together gives us a destination, whether or not it's where we wanted to go. I think that if you're starting to, my ex-roommate, who I loved to pieces, Claire Capriel, said to me after she read it when I just finished, she was like, "You think you wrote a book about sex, but you wrote a book about PTSD." I was like, "Oh God damn it, you're right." Like, here I am. Oh well, but and I think that's how it came through. So I think that in the book, sex is obviously there, but it's really as a pushing against what is present, what is absence, what is connection, what is not connection, how do you keep yourself intact, when you're trying to figure out what intact is, I think.
Right, but you're doing it in a really radical way because I think, our patriarchal society would completely want to shame us if the way we dealt with the trauma is through having sex with strangers. Um, that makes perfect sense to me to do it that way, but I think that's a really radical way of looking at it, right? And like I said, I haven't reached the end, so I don't know if there's, if things are kind of resolved in whatever way. I don't know that yet, but no, because nobody is. You just do your best, right? And I wonder how much does the story take place in San Francisco?
I think part of it might.
Yeah.
I
Well,
know part of it.
there's some traveling years as well too, so that's clear that there's more than one city going on. But yeah, okay,
We know it's a coastal city, and we know it's not on the East Coast.
right. And I love the way the flyover is referred to, and the descriptions are so completely accurate of these characters that come from the flyover states. Okay, I got to find a question in here. Sorry. I'm just trying to unravel all these different threads in my head to follow one down. Um, can you explain to me what you mean by all of our stories being overwritten?
Sure. I mean, it's palimpsest. It's if I go and buy a bunch of flowers, I might remember, a painting by uh, someone who paints a lot of flowers, so I can't think of right now. Monet. If I'm at a pond and I see, water lilies, I might think about Monet, and all of a sudden I'm not in that moment. I'm not there. I'm looking at Monet, even as I'm looking at the pond, so that nothing is only ours, right? It
Right.
all belongs to this sort of, if it was a book, it would be the Akashic book, the book of all books, but it's just experience. So it's all sorts of different detritus that's around us, experience of our own and other people's, the story someone told me about their drunk uncle, for example. When I see someone's uncle who's drunk, I'm like, oh, Susie's, it all sticks together. It's all sticky.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that has become more so when you have the internet right in your hand all the time and you have like news and all these other things accessible all the time? Does that
I know that that's the way they thought it would change our thinking. It would the beginning of the internet, that we would stop thinking in a linear fashion. We start thinking in a much more networked fashion. I don't know. 20 years ago, it was calls about the death of literacy, and we were going to be icon driven. There would be no literature and all of this, and that hasn't really come to pass.
no, people are buying books, people are loving books and reading books, writing books.
Um, I forgot the question.
It's fine. Well, I was following up on my question about the internet making
right, about
that
how
be more so, because I was thinking, as somebody who has a really hard time following one train of thought, it seems like it offers a whole nother realm of things that I can go after in ways, right?
great.
Yeah. Yeah, making it really hard to keep the original idea or whatever in your mind at the same time. How about your research? Was it mostly online or in books or both? Both. Do you have a huge library of
I
books?
have a much smaller library than I used to. It's down to about a bookcase and a half.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. Lots of moving and getting rid of.
Not a lot of moving. I've been in my apartment for 16 years,
Oh,
but
good for you.
but at some point I realized I probably wasn't going to read any of these again, and they were here because I loved them. So anything that I really loved got to stay. Anything that was a functional book, like a school book, could stay. Um, but if it was something that I just sort of liked, that I was fond of, I debated it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a fairly large collection. Everything from, well, I'm guessing your bookshelf looks a lot like mine. Actually, where a good section is the Cassandra Delatte section.
Yep.
I don't really know.
Yep. I'm sorry, my earphones aren't very stable. So, I do want to tell people that we're planning to do a book release celebration. Is there anything else set up that you have planned? Do you have other events going on this fall? Have you done anything in person?
I have not yet done anything in person. I've done some print interviews and online interviews. I know that we're going to do.
Where can we look for those from people that know how to ask questions?
Lambda Literary Review is doing one. Something called Worm's Journal is doing one. And I can't think of anything else at the end of my workday. But
Yep.
they're coming. They'll be out there. I am hoping to set up another reading release in San Francisco, and we'll see after that. I have some plotting, but I don't want to say anything. There are a couple of projects actually that are involved with the book that are really exciting. There's 1001, but there's also 1002, Sant 1002, which is, I gave sections of the book, chapters of the book, to different musicians, and they sent back music, a piece of music based on that. So those will be going up on my website and their website.
And your website is?
Oh, it's daphnegottlieb.com.
Excellent.
But also, What was the also?
Other
Oh,
things.
there are playlists too. I put
Oh,
together a
sweet.
playlist because there are all these footnoted songs.
There
So
is.
there are 3 different playlists. One is page 4, one is page something else, and a third one is incidental music from throughout the book. So those will be coming out too.
Excellent. I love that. That's really appropriate for this book, too. I mean, I like to do
Like,
playlists, but this one, it has so much of like lyrics and all those little earworms that we carry around in our heads. So we're going to try to put together a East Bay book release celebration, whatever reading in November, and we need to pick a date. So we'll talk to each other about that, and then you'll have something in the city. How has COVID impacted all this? Has it made a difference in the release?
I am the worst person in the world to ask because I work full time and I go to graduate school part time. So before COVID, the 6 months leading up to COVID really blooming, I was ensconced in front of my computer
Yeah,
or at work.
yeah,
And then I was sleeping. Those were the 3 things that I did. And so when COVID really geared up, I knew it was happening because I was in the emergency room where I work. But, I'd come home and I'd be in front of the computer. And
yeah.
so that was, I had no social life, no real outlet, no, I'd see the news, but not really because I wasn't really watching. I'd get it off the podcast, like the New York Times podcast. And it wasn't until last December when school broke for the winter, when I sort of popped my head up and I looked around and I went through what other people had been going through for about a year.
Yeah.
And I just had all the grief and I had no one to grieve with because everyone was like already like hit their stride with the grieving thing.
It's been
But,
weird. Me too.
no,
I worked through the whole thing. I'm a homebody anyways. If I don't, I really try not to go anywhere when I can, so it didn't have a huge impact either. But the one thing I think that is different is not doing readings in person. And some people have adapted to the Zoom life quite well and prefer it. And I just don't think reading to a computer screen is like anything like a live audience.
you can't feel people. You can't
Right.
feel when you have their breath and they have your breath and you're creating something in that space together where that when they really understand or they're paying attention or they're, reading their phone in front of you or whatever it is, but all of it is so dynamic compared to the static page and it's such a different way of experiencing a book and I miss it terribly and even with everything loosening, although Delta,
Right.
I'm going back to school, so I won't see much of it.
Right. I did remember that you were in school, so you are a busy human. My God. How long did it take you to finish the book?
Probably about 3 years, 3.5 years, but then my publisher sat on it for a couple years because he had some personal stuff that was going on and then COVID. And so
What brought you to this publisher in particular?
Jody Bellamy.
Hmm?
Jody Bellamy. I pick people's brains, obviously that. I'm like,
Yep.
who do you know? What's working? What's and so she sent me to the publisher and she called him a wonderkind and he's pretty wonderful. He's pretty magical. So
Excellent. That's good. I cannot wait to be in a space and hear it read aloud when there is that feeling that you just described when we're
do you find that you write more when you're reading out?
yeah.
Me too, just because I know someone's listening and I think that all of us can find other things to do than sit in a room in front of a computer.
Yeah,
But I know that other people really, really savor the process. But I know that this book would not have been written if it wasn't for Courage Put Out series, because that was the one place that I could bring really loaded sexual material, and I knew that people would be like, "Yeah, okay."
Which one? Which one was it?
Courage Put Out at
Uh-huh.
Center for Sex and Culture.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I miss having like new shit show and stuff to press me into having something new to show up with a lot. That really helps me. I kind of didn't really write much for the past few years, so I'm getting back now, finally. But it had nothing to do with COVID, my own stuff. But yeah, having places to share it, that's great. I think I mostly want people to know that they absolutely have to buy this book, that they have to, that they should go to madhatpress.com to look for it. And I don't really have that many great questions for you, I have to admit. I didn't prepare. Oh, you know what I want to say? Happy birthday.
Oh, thanks.
It's tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Well, happy birthday. Facebook told me.
Facebook.
And people should go to your website, daphnegottlieb.com, to find all of your books. Are all your books linked there and events?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting up a new website in a couple weeks. It's just not quite there yet, and it's not the time. When it's the time, it will.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't rush it. Don't rush it. What else would you like people to know? Anything?
There will be a personal ad contest.
Yes.
And probably with live readings, I think, but haven't figured out quite how it goes.
Oh my God. Okay. So I have a writing workshop on Monday nights, and I gave a prompt recently that was to write a personal. And somebody was like, oh God, I got to spend 20 minutes doing that. And then I was like, okay, let me read, a couple examples. And then I read them, and then they were like, oh, and wrote something fantastic. So that is going to be really fun. I can't wait. That sounds great.
I am not proud to say that there are people who recognized my ads back in the day. I would get, hi, Daphne.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
So you wonder about poetic voice, and there you go.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Did I ever post that?
No, never. No. We just happen to know what they like, what they look like. There's some descriptions that are so accurate. There's a scene with a younger man. Wow, it was really visceral. I can't remember exactly the language used, but it was a very intense attraction in this scene, and I was like, I can really relate to this. Oh, but yeah.
I appreciate, because the one question that I think I'm not going to answer around this book, or is it real? How much of it is real? How much of it is your experience? Because I don't think it matters, and I don't think that would be asked of any men. Like,
no,
honestly,
you're right.
I don't think that it would even be a question. So it's about transgressive female sexuality being written on a page and blah blah blah. And I'm not having it.
Yeah, it's very transgressive. That is what it is. But not only that, there's a lot of books that are trying to be transgressive, and the scenes don't really ring true. There's like, it's not quite believable. Whereas these scenes, they have all these things going, all this poetic language and all these quotes and all this stuff going on, but this scene itself of the meeting of this person or in this encounter is really accurate and like feels really real. And I love that. See, not a question. This is why I try to do things in person more than Zoom, because I'm kind of a mess on Zoom. It's hard to know like when the other person's going to speak and just have like a relaxed conversation as much. But I really appreciate you joining me here.
I'm so grateful. It makes me feel less like Sister Outsider.
No way. Everybody is. If there's one thing that has happened because of COVID is like we're all outsiders. There's no in. It's like everything's wonky. But my reading series Moondrop that I do with Kalechi Obozo, we've been focusing on just showcasing people that had books come out during this time because, you know, it's like a raw deal. So we had an in-person outdoor event in June, and we just had the Beast Crawl one was our September event, which worked out well because then we didn't have to do so much planning ourselves. And it was just all people with new books that are fantastic that we want to promote. And our next one might be that too. So when I saw you having a new book out, I was super excited to plug it in any way that I can. So, you know, this will be out in the world and we'll have a show and we'll hear you read and it'll be wonderful. You know what? How about we take it away and you would read a little bit for us maybe?
Um,
You think?
yeah,
I should have
do that.
warned you sooner.
Yeah. So let me find something. The phone book.
Anything. Take your time.
Okay.
An Invasion of the Body Snatchers is another oft quoted. Bambi, The Buzzcocks, The Diary of Anne Frank.
I'm just gonna drop it at random.
Yeah, no worries.
I know what I want to read. I think it's worth saying that there is this strange fairy tale that is peppered through the book.
Tell us.
And so I'm going to read the first part of that. The hardest thing in this book, in writing the book, there's I end up sobbing over a mouse. Like anything that can happen in the book to a human is fine with me, but animal gets hurt, and the animal did not get hurt really, but okay. Dear Jay, once upon a time, two sheep were crazily in love. As it goes, they had a baby, a little boy. The sheep were not surprised that their son was beautiful, for both sheep parents were good looking in their own right. They were not surprised that from the moment of his birth he was quick of mind and body. They were, however, surprised that he was red, bright red, fire truck stoplight lipstick marks red. The sheep's parents thought he was all the more beautiful for it, but his beauty brought them some significant worry and sadness. The world is harder on the extraordinary than the mundane. Their son was extraordinary. They saw the incredible pain in store for their child, the suffering they couldn't stop, and they briefly considered killing him, flushing him down the toilet for a quick death or smothering him in his crib. They did not want their baby sheep hurt by the world. But the world was there, and love made the world better, and so they kept their little boy. And as he grew, they loved him more and more. He became more and more adorable. He was precocious and perpetually delighted, and he was kind. He was the color of blood, that is not the blood of war, but the blood of life. It came to be, as it happens, that the little boy one day had a little sister. The little sister was pale and sweet, and her parents loved her very much. She and her brother would play tirelessly, running up and down hills, grazing on grass, and naming things they saw in the clouds. One day they were playing kick the can in a vacant lot when they noticed two men staring at them. The men were wearing their high school letterman's jackets. The little boy sheep had just started to read. He sounded it out. H-E-N. But while he was reading, the young men rushed at him, since the red sheep must be very, very valuable. They scooped up the red sheep like it was a raspberry snow cone in summer. The girl sheep screamed and screamed because they were taking her brother away, and he was her life. Her life was nothing without his. She picked up the can they'd been kicking and slashed herself from navel to neck. Her coat wicked the red all over her, and when the men looked back like the screaming girl sheep, they were thrilled. What's better than a red sheep? A white one that turns red. They dropped her brother, they grabbed her, they left. The little sheep banged his head on the ground until he lost consciousness. Stupid, 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 he sobbed. If he could only have read faster. H-E-N-R, love, S. So that's the sheep.
Yeah, I read that last night. I don't even know where to Yeah. Do you want to tell us anything about that?
The sheep story continues.
Okay. That's it.
Charles Manson and the List Killer and
Yep.
all sorts of other things.
And you have to get the book, Saint 1001 by Daphne Gottlieb. DaphneGottlieb.com, Madhat Press. Get the book. I promise you, it's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much, Cassandra. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm going to hit the